Eggs have a Salmonella problem. Salmonella is a bacterium that lives in the digestive tracts of animals, including chickens, and contaminates food through contact with feces or infected tissue. When a human consumes it, it causes food poisoning, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, stomach cramps, and fever that typically last 4 to 7 days. In healthy adults, the illness is miserable but survivable. In young children, the elderly, and people with weakened immune systems, it can be fatal. Salmonella can reach the inside of an egg through 2 separate routes. The first is through the shell. If feces or contaminated material on the outside of the shell contains the bacteria, it can work its way through the porous surface and into the egg. The second route bypasses the shell entirely. If a hen is infected with Salmonella in her ovaries or oviduct, the bacteria can be present inside the egg before the shell has even formed around it, making the contamination internal from the moment the egg is laid. Both problems exist everywhere, but the United States and most of the rest of the world have responded to them with completely different strategies. And that choice is the entire reason American eggs live in refrigerators, while other eggs sit on a shelf at room temperature. The American method targets the shell. Eggs in the US are industrially washed shortly after being laid, scrubbed with warm water and detergent to remove feces, dirt, and surface bacteria, including Salmonella. It works on the outside, but it comes at a cost. Eggs have a natural protective coating called the cuticle, a thin layer that seals the pores of the shell and acts as a barrier against bacteria entering from the outside. Washing strips that cuticle away. A synthetic coating is applied afterward, but it does not replicate the cuticle's effectiveness. With the shell's natural defense gone, bacteria from the environment can penetrate more easily. And even setting aside that outside contamination, any Salmonella already inside the egg, from the hen herself, remains a separate problem. That's why American eggs need refrigeration. It compensates for the lost barrier while also slowing the growth of any Salmonella already inside. The method used in Europe, the UK, Australia, and most other countries takes the opposite approach. Eggs are not washed. This means feces and dirt may remain on the shell, which is why non-United States eggs sometimes look less pristine than American ones. But the cuticle remains intact, keeping the shell's natural defense in place and bacteria from penetrating inside. For the internal contamination route, the Salmonella that comes from the hen's own reproductive system, unwashed eggs and an intact cuticle offer no additional protection. So instead of relying on refrigeration, these countries address the source directly, through mass vaccination of hens against Salmonella. A vaccinated hen does most of the time not have Salmonella in her ovaries, which eliminates the internal contamination route before it begins. The result is an egg protected on the outside by its natural cuticle, and on the inside by the health of the hen that laid it. Refrigeration is simply not needed. However, some people in the non-washing and vaccinated countries refrigerate their eggs at home anyway. It won't add any extra protection against Salmonella specifically. That is already handled by the intact cuticle and the vaccination program. But refrigeration does slow the growth of other bacteria, extending how long the egg stays fresh from around 3 weeks at room temperature to up to 2 months in the fridge, the same shelf life as washed American eggs. There is generally no downside to doing this. The one exception is repeatedly taking eggs in and out of the fridge. The temperature change causes condensation to form on the shell, and that moisture can soften or strip away the cuticle, the very protective layer that makes refrigeration unnecessary in the first place. If you decide to refrigerate your unwashed and vaccinated eggs, keep them there consistently, rather than moving them back and forth. The reason the two systems exist at all comes down to history and regulation rather than science. The US scaled up industrial egg production before effective vaccination was available, and washing, together with refrigeration, became the established standard. By the time vaccination was developed, the washing and refrigeration infrastructure was already built in and regulated. Europe chose vaccination plus natural cuticle protection as its primary intervention instead, and built its regulations around that. On infection rates, the EU method performs better. European Salmonella rates from eggs are consistently lower than American ones, despite American eggs sitting in refrigerators and European ones sitting at room temperature. The one area where the American method wins is shelf life. Refrigerated washed eggs last up to 2 months. Unwashed eggs at room temperature are typically best within 3 weeks, though, as covered earlier, you can still refrigerate unwashed and vaccinated eggs to match that 2-month shelf life, giving you the safety benefits of the European method and the longevity of the American one at the same time. Click the video on your screen right now and I'll explain another everyday mystery you've wondered about your whole life but never thought to look up.